Hey, what's up, guys? So I'm Joe Ramos, and I show people how to earn double digits on their money while backed by real estate. And also another cool fact, I'm getting trained by a UFC fighter at the moment. My wife and I are going to be getting married in May, and so I wanted to make sure that she knew how to defend herself. So found a guy at a real estate meetup, and now we're in training. So thanks for having me.
Teaching people how to earn double digits. Hmm, interesting. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today, just like you heard it, Joe Ramos, and we're going to talk about real estate and touch base on a little bit of mindset, what he's done to become what he is right now, and the portfolio that he has, and the mastermind that he's trying to grow. And we're trying to pick his brain into how did he become the person that he is right now, right? Like how did he get in real estate, his story, how many units, what's his favorite strategy, what is he working on right now? So this podcast is about that. Thank you so much for coming, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So all right, let's go deep dive right into your story. Like, how does Joe Ramos become interested in real estate?
All right. So the way I started was I was doing sales from kind of a young age. I used to have a lawn business and I recycled cans and bottles. I went to school for engineering, but I didn't finish. I actually worked at Best Buy while I was going to school, and I went off to San Luis Obispo here in California near Santa Barbara. And I ended up not finishing, came back to Riverside, California, where I grew up at, and I was still working at Best Buy. Got approached by somebody who I was helping out with TVs, and he's like, "Hey, you want to try and sell cars?" And I was like, "Well, I don't want to work here forever." I think I was like 19 or 20, and so I ended up trying out selling cars. And by my third or fourth month, I became top salesman, and I just got addicted ever since to that. So basically, got into the car business, and then a little while after, I was renting out like a house with a couple of buddies, kept on taking the money to the bank to the landlord and everything like that. And I thought, okay, this is kind of stupid. Started making a little bit more money. My tax advisor kind of told me that I should probably invest in something. So this was back like 07, 08. So I got my first house at the end of 2008, and I bought that house when I was 21 years old, and I was working in the car business. So I didn't really have a lot of time off. I didn't spend my money. I was very frugal with my money. But on that house, I only put $6,500 down. And I took the guys that I was living with, and they rented out the rooms, and they basically paid for me to live. And so ever since then, I was like, oh man, this is pretty cool. Like, so I just kept on trying to figure out a way to be able to buy more houses. So in my business doing car sales, I kept on moving up, making more money, and I also had a pretty awesome like loan guy and a good realtor. And I think that's really something that I would take back to people, is like making sure you have a really good team, because that can help you become really successful. And I think that's the reason why that second house that I got a couple years later, I got a really awesome deal on that house, and my loan guy made it happen because it was just me. So I basically went to him like every time, like I kept on making more money towards the end of the year. I'd go and plan with my tax guy, plan with my loan guy to try and figure out, okay, like how can I get another house? And he would say, nope, you can't afford shit. Excuse my language, but okay, now you got to keep on making more. I got to, kind of eat it in taxes, save up some more money. So then, a couple of years later, I bought another house. And so my whole goal was to buy at least like 3 houses in that area before I, ended up moving out of Riverside. Got into a little thing with my company at that time. So I've been at that dealership for almost 10 years, racked up 3 houses, and then ended up moving out here to Huntington Beach, and got a job in Long Beach working at another dealership. So I was able to get this house. So that was number 4. And then, and that was all just with my own income, but just with me being diligent on, saving my money, not spending my money, you know what I mean? Not, buying lavish things, not going on lots of vacations. I mean, the business I was in, I was kind of forced to stay there. I worked every weekend. So I just kept on saving my money and kept on buying properties. And then, I ended up getting, it kind of kept on building and building from there. Right. And then, a couple years ago, I ended up kind of getting tired. I was getting burnt out of that business, and I ended up getting a Airbnb up in Big Bear. And then after that, I refinanced this house here, and that was the first time I actually pulled money out. So a lot of people think that you have to keep on pulling money out to be able to buy properties. But if you're really diligent in your savings and the way you strategize, I mean, I also had a 401k. That's something that I forget to mention a lot of times, is that I've actually used my 401k about 3 times. And I borrowed against that money to be able to buy some properties, paid myself back. I'm sure we could dive into that a little bit more, but yeah, like you said earlier about mindset, it really is a mindset change, because a lot of people don't like to get uncomfortable. They don't like to live with other people. But, up until a couple of years ago, I rented out my rooms, and it didn't bother me. It helped me become a good landlord too, and property manager and homeowner, all those things kind of like tie in. But, some people don't want to live with other people or don't want to get uncomfortable or whatever the case may be. So that's one thing that I always tell people is, don't think in such the short term, because like I didn't become a multimillionaire overnight, but because I took those steps and those actions and I was diligent, and I didn't really worry about like all the little details that people tend to worry about. I was able to become financially free through real estate. And but anyways, going back to like the first time I took out money out of this house, basically just kind of catapulted me, because I ended up buying some properties out of state. And that's when I started buying some properties in Georgia. And just like we were talking a little bit ago off the camera, what I like to do is scour the MLS. I get updates on my phone. The houses come to me, and then I kind of evaluate them, right? So I'm pretty good at evaluating what it's going to rent out for, what, if I can buy it for this price and this is going to make sense. And so I call them and I make an offer. And if they say no, no big deal. If they say yes, all right, great. So, I bought that house cash for a little under $100,000, ended up renting it out a little bit later for $1,250 or $1,300, something like that, and then refinanced it out, got the money back, payments like $500 a month, including taxes and insurance. And then, after that, I got my buddy's dad involved, and he actually became my first like private money lender slash like, one of my business partners. But I've also got another business partner as well that we were working on, a place in Ohio at the same time. So, I think just kind of maybe doing your due diligence, taking action, of course. And then also the thing a lot of people don't realize too is like, if you know somebody in a certain area and they kind of, they can kind of drive around and check it out for you, or maybe they are a little bit more familiar with the area, you can kind of ask some questions. And that's how I learned about that little town that I got 3 houses now in Georgia, is just because my buddy was telling me about it. He wasn't taking action in investing, but he knew that I like to, and that just kind of sparked my interest. I did the numbers and then I created a team there. So now I've got an awesome property manager, and that's what makes me want to buy more properties, especially if I can get them, 20% off, go and buy them. Like this one we just bought for 170,000. It appraised for 210, a couple of weeks later. And then, now we're renting it out and we are refinancing it. So basically we're going to cash flow and get pretty much almost all of our money back. I mean, we might have maybe 10 grand in it, but still to have something that cash flows $600-700 a month and something you don't have to worry about is kind of nice, So I like to do a little bit of everything. I don't know like how much further you want me to go, but like I said, I have some multifamily in Ohio as well, and I like those because our property manager, we've got an awesome property manager, so she kind of just takes care of that headache. And then I do short-term rentals as well. So we have a fund, so it's called Lock and Key Capital, and we raise money to buy short-term rentals in Florida. So we also have that as well. So I think just being able to partner up with different people is what's kind of helped me really grow. Also, raising private capital has helped me grow. So, once I kind of like learned for myself, I'm like, okay, well, now where do I go from here? So now it's about, trying to help people, teach people, and then also get them involved so they can see their money grow as well. And then hopefully eventually do it themselves. Right. So I definitely take care of more of the short-term rental side of things versus my business partner, just because, my customer service background and stuff, that doesn't bother me. And, obviously like, having a business partner, you guys want to be able to do certain things, and the other person is going to do other things, right? You don't want to all be doing the same thing, because then you don't really need each other. So he
Well,
does things on.
let me take you back for a second,
Sure.
to where you said, so you became a top salesman within 3 months, right?
Mhm.
What was the strategy in there? What are you good at sales? Are you still good at sales? Is that something you still pursue actively?
Yeah, I mean, we have a new company that we just started, which is for gutter and window cleaning service. So we're actually starting one up in Idaho, Ohio, because of our property manager, and then we're going to be going into Georgia again because I have people out there, and I am kind of like the sales manager role right now because I'm helping teach the sales guys, but I'm also working on getting clients, reaching out to property management companies or direct to people and trying to get their business. So yeah, I would say, I don't know. I feel like it was kind of innate. I mean, I did pretty well at Best Buy. I really enjoyed Best Buy. I would have stayed there, if I hadn't gotten into the car business and probably been the store manager. I mean, not gloating just because, but it's just because of, when you're passionate about something, it's easier to succeed. But I really enjoyed sales, and I feel like I'm pretty good with customer service. So I do take pride in that. It definitely taught me a lot of things. My dad was actually really surprised that I was in the car business because he knows that I'm very like impatient. And so, you do kind of have to, when you're in that role and you're dealing with the general public, you do kind of have to take a step back and really like swallow your pride sometimes. But, for me, when I saw the money, and I guess it really drove me to succeed. So I do enjoy doing sales. I actually started in sales. I got into like when the internet started getting really popular for the internet, sales. So I started that at my dealership. And then from there, I actually called people on the phone. So that taught me how to do cold calls and really get comfortable on the phone, because they saw how well I was doing, and they gave me that opportunity to be able to call people on the phone, get people back in. So I did really well with that. And then when YouTube started, I actually, you could still find me on there, but VW Joe. So I kind of just made a name for myself. And some of it might tie back into my mom, because my mom was in sales. So I don't know like how that all works together, but I'm sure I kind of picked up some things from her. I definitely had asked her advice, but they didn't even know that I went to work at the dealership until after I was already telling them, like, I was there for a while. I ended up buying a car just so I can build up my credit, even though I already had my truck. That was another thing that I did, do things intentionally, right? So I bought that car about a year before I decided to buy the house, because I wanted to be able to build up my credit. So thinking ahead, right? Everybody wants everything right now, right? And I still know a lot of people like, oh, I want to get a house right now. I need to get a house right now. It's like, maybe take a step back, because if you don't, then you are going to probably pay way too much, or you're going to regret your purchase or whatever. So, instant gratification is definitely something you got to be careful with. So doing things intently, but I hope that answers your question. But yeah, then I got into a manager role. So then I ended up having a team of sales guys. So I taught people, and then I ended up getting into finance. So by the time I left,
top three, I'll say advice, maybe. Top three things to keep in mind when going into sales, things that you should know before going into sales.
things that you should know into going into sales. I mean, I would say, when it comes to dealing with the general public, at least, I would say you need to really emulate, I guess, the other person. So that's something I'm not saying like, okay, like I'm a chameleon in a sense, right? I would say that sometimes people kind of think that that's maybe like dirty, but no, you kind of need to know who you're dealing with, right? So, if they like something, you like something. If they don't like something, you don't like something. I mean, but obviously, another thing is to listen. Like don't always be talking over everybody. You don't have to, what do they call it? Like, like vomit of the mouth. Like you don't need to just like, especially when it came to cars, just to kind of like tell you like my thing, or like houses, right? You don't need to be like, it has this, that. you need to figure out and you need to ask the customer exactly like what they're looking for. And then, obviously point those things out, because there's no reason for you to point out, oh, wow, look at this awesome garage, if they don't really care about the garage. Right. So I would definitely say that's another one. And then patience. So I would say, that was something that I had to work on, because I'm not a patient person, and so yeah, so I would say just going out there and talking to people too. It depends on really what you're going after. I mean, I guess in the real estate game, I mean, for me, it's easy to pick up the phone and just call an agent and talk to them and just ask a question. It never hurts to ask, right? And this is something that I tell a lot of my friends who, are kind of looking their first time for a house. It's like, it never hurts to ask. Even if you already have an agent, you can call them, you can ask some questions, and that way you can like know if you're wasting your time or not. But yeah, I think that's definitely a big thing that people probably have.
When you were saving money, and then your tax advisor started to tell you you need to invest this money somewhere, when does real estate come across the board? Like, when do you start thinking, okay, maybe real estate is the play for the long term?
Well, so the reason why I kind of got into it in that sense was because I started making more money, right? So instead of getting taxed so much, if I have like the write-off, I mean, that was kind of the big thing. And so again, it goes back to the whole bigger picture, right? So my fiance now, she wasn't when I helped her, but last year she just got a property. So this is really relevant, right? In September, she got a property up in Big Bear. And this just kind of goes to show you that you don't always have to look at things one direction, right? So she was able to qualify for a property out here because she's a nurse, she makes decent money, but her rent was way cheaper than it would be to buy a condo, because she could probably only get a condo out here. And now instead of paying $4,000 a month, you know what I mean? She bought a place up in Big Bear instead, because her rent is cheaper. So she was actually able to get a vacation home loan and only put 10% down on a less expensive property that now could be a vacation home. Now we turned it into an Airbnb. But then also she has the write-offs, right? So, she has the write-offs. So all the, the money that she put to repairs and fixing up the place is now a write-off. So instead of, paying, on $140,000 a year, maybe she's going to pay on $100,000 a year if she's able to write those things off. And now that thing, because we bought it as a distressed dollar amount, it's almost worth 100,000 more than she paid for it, not even a year later. So that's why I always like to tell people, don't always just think about it one direction, try and figure out other ways around it. Because yeah, I know a lot of people who make decent money but don't own a property, and that's huge. And that's why I originally got into it, is because he was telling me, it's not like I had a lot of money saved up. Luckily I did the FHA 3.5% down. So that's why I only put $6,500 down on the place. But at that time, Obama was giving that credit. So I even got like $8,000 back, because they had that Obama credit at that time at the end of 2008. And so on my taxes that year, instead of, paying money like I was before, because I was starting to make more money, I got like 10 or 12 grand back or something like that. And it was like, I got paid to buy a house, and then the two guys, paid $500 a piece, and my payment was $1,300. So to me, it was just like a no brainer. And then I kept on making more and more money. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I do this again? Right. And then that just kind of, it sparked me. And I just was like, okay, now I need to figure out how to do more of these. Right. So the next one I got was even a better deal. It was even less expensive, and I still have both of these houses to the day, and it's crazy to me, just to see the value, how the value's gone up. Right. But it all starts with taking action.
When do you start touching the multifamily sector?
So let's see, that was like a couple years ago. So yeah, that was my business partner that I have now with our with the Land Shark Financial Freedom podcast and our mastermind and coaching program. So he and I have a separate company just for those multifamily, and so it was just kind of random that they both ended up in Ohio, but that's why I like to focus on multifamilies for certain areas, single family for certain areas, short-term rentals for certain areas. I mean, I wouldn't advise people to spread so thin all at the beginning, but when you get systems and processes and people in place, then it's a lot easier to manage, some here, some there, so yeah, a couple of years ago, so we have an 8 unit, and we have a duplex. The 8 unit, found on LoopNet, and that one was a really good deal. We ended up, kind of revamping it slowly. It came with some tenants, but we got a few more tenants, and then got a lot of the people out. We had to spend some money on it, needless to say, but now it's renting out really well. And then the other one in Ohio was actually a single family home. Well, it was a duplex. They turned into a single family, and then we turned it back into a duplex. And that was a full remodel that we got from a wholesaler for like 45 grand, but we put in like about 130 into it, and then refinanced it out, got the money back, and rented it out. So yeah, it's just kind of recycling, and that's how you grow. But a lot of people are afraid to, take a higher interest rate on their property and refinance it and pull some money out. And that's what I finally ended up doing with those 2 properties I was telling you about. I did that, and that just kind of helps, grow and grow and grow, because if you have that equity sitting there, yeah, it's nice that, you may have an almost paid off house, but if you take that money and you go and buy 3 or 4 more houses, and then you rent them out, the other people the renters are paying them off. And now you're also building equity in those too. Right. So again, it's a mind shift change, because a lot of people, want to just, I just want to have a paid off house, or, but once you get around all that, then you can really see how you can grow a lot faster.
What are your thoughts on paying off your home earlier? Like, what would someone consider that?
Why would they consider that?
Yeah. Well, would you pay all of your houses up front?
No, never. I mean, I have one that's paid off, and I don't like it, honestly. And then, I mean, I almost had, another one was almost paid off too, but, I actually took out a lot of money out of that one because it was almost paid off, and the rates were decently low at the time, and just ran with it. I mean,
I think I might know where you're going with this, but just tell me why you don't like a property with all the cash sitting there.
Just because it's not doing anything, right? So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of nice. You get a little bit more cash flow. And, I know some people are like, oh, it's good to have at least 1 or 2 paid off, depending on how big your portfolio is. But to me, I can take that money and I can do a lot more with it, right?
Right.
So that's my point. If people don't know, if people aren't disciplined, and I think that's a big thing too, is discipline. We haven't really talked about this, but that's why I was able to do like all these houses, because I was disciplined in saving my money. So like I always tell people, pay yourself first, right? So if you have like a W-2 job, what I used to do was I had them do a direct deposit for one account, and then another account, and another account. And one of them was like my savings, and one was going towards, that next house. And then also had my 401k, and then everything else left is to pay my bills. So now pretending you're poor. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I know some people who kind of relate to this, but just, me just pretending I don't have the money that I have is kind of like helps you not to spend the money. But again, I have friends who aren't disciplined like that. And, I've tried to teach people to do the same things. They're like, I can't, because if I see the money in there, okay, well, don't even look at it, like don't have a debit card to it. Don't have an online access to it. But then when it comes time, when you're ready to buy a house, you'd be surprised as to how much money you have, right? You save a couple of dollars a day, you could, probably, save 10, 20, 30 grand a year without even knowing it, right?
Yeah. What do you think there's a difference between not being poor and working towards getting wealthy?
Not being well, I don't know if I'm off base on this, but like, people say that it's hard being poor, and it's hard, making money, but like choose your hard, right? I mean, I think we are very fortunate here in this country to where there's a lot of opportunity. So there are people that are poor in other countries, and they don't have the same opportunity that we have, but we have a great opportunity to where you can change your life in a matter of, a year. I mean, 5 years, you could be, I mean, heck, I'm sure we both listened to or watched, YouTube videos, podcasts about people who had been living on the streets and are now multimillionaires, maybe, even more. But again, it's because they took action and they were disciplined, and they, had, a goal or, so I don't think, being poor, I think it's kind of a mindset sometimes,
Me-
honestly. And I might, I might like piss some people off on that one. I mean, I know everybody's got their circumstance, right? But my parents were poor when they first met. They had nothing. I mean, my mom told me like whatever my dad had in his shoebox, that's all he had, and they're not, by any means super wealthy or anything, but they've done well for themselves. They did well for my brother and I. I mean, they didn't take as much action or risks that I did, but they have two paid off houses. And, to me, I don't think that's smart, but that's their comfort. They're in their 60s, so it's different for them, right? So
Let's raise a question. So when you're teaching people how to, how to take the first step, apparently that's the hardest part, right? How to take that first initial investment, how to go through that jump. What are some of the um, main concerns that those type of people have?
what are the main concerns? I think that people, they don't think that they can afford it, right? But you'd be surprised as to, if you were to save your money in certain aspects that you could afford it, right? So I think that people are either afraid, I don't have enough money down, I can't afford the house. Houses are too expensive. But I think what happens there is that everybody is looking for like their end all be all house, right? So when I went into getting my first house, I knew that wasn't the house that I was going to live in forever, right? So to me, it was like, I just wanted to get something in, decent area that I could afford. There was, there was another one that I almost bought that I looked at right before I got that one. And yeah, it had the corner lot, it had the 3-car garage that I wanted, the side gate. And I was like, oh man, this would be sweet. I ended up getting a place like that actually by the third one. But, I took a step back because I looked at my budget and I'm like, okay, well, the payment's going to be this much on that one, but it's going to be a lot less on this one. And it still serves the same purpose, right? So that is something that I think people are kind of going in trying to get like their dream house, and so that kind of doesn't help when it comes to looking at the numbers. So then they think that they can't afford it, that it's too much, right? Or I want to live in this certain area. Well, your budget and what you can afford, you can't live in that area. So now again, you need to step back, get uncomfortable, and go live in a different area for a little bit. I mean, I've heard people talk about this, like, oh, go move back in with your parents. I think that's a little extreme. Just depends on age and your comfort level, right? And if you have a family or not. But definitely, it's that same thing about getting uncomfortable. So okay, move to a different area that's a little bit less expensive. Get a really good deal on that house, something that you could fix up while you live in it, and put that 3.5 or 5% down. Live in it for a little bit, and then in a couple years, you're gonna have some equity built up. If you bought it right and were strategic and added some value to the property. And then you can maybe move into, the area that you want, or a bigger house if you need, because, at first you're just, looking at things that you don't need. I saw something actually today about Zillow putting on, people can search by, monthly payment. And I think that's actually really smart. And hopefully it'll kind of help people realize like what their affordability level is. I think I kind of went off on a tangent, but I hope that kind of helps answer the question.
100%.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, and now what's going on for the future? I've heard Grant Cardone said this, that buying a house is the biggest lie, the history of. But what he says is that you don't want to buy something that is not going to make you money, right?
Hmm.
What do you think about that? So when you bought your first house, right? It was intended to make you money with the people that you were living with, one way or another. It was also to live for yourself, but it was also for the people that you were living with. How about the next investments? Where those investments also towards making you wealthier, or were
Yeah.
they properties that you just wanted to keep?
No, so good question. So the first one, right, yeah, I already had people living with me and I figured, hey, why not they pay for my house instead of me pay for someone else's house, right? And then the write-off. So needing the write-off. But I do like what Grant Cardone says, and I actually understand it more now that I've been in the game longer, but also because of the way that things are shifting. That was kind of like what my girl did was she's renting where she wants to live, but she's buying where she wants to rent. And that's kind of what he talks about. And so that totally makes sense in certain aspects because, it's just better off to get in the game than not be in the game at all. Right. So that goes back to mindset, goes back to, shifting your thinking on, okay, well, if I can't get something here where I want, can I get something here? How can I get it? And so I do agree with that. I mean, my second property, what happened with that one, I was actually going to move into another house for myself that had a pool that was awesome, right? I was that person. I was like, oh man, all right, cool. I got this first house. Now I can get the house I want. Well, God's like, nope, because something happened with that loan, and that's actually when I found like the loan officer who I still use to this day, who I've used a lot of times. I found him with that second house, and I found my awesome realtor that I used with that second house as well, because I had some different people for the first house because I really didn't know what I was doing, and I just kind of got referred to some people and kind of went with the flow. But I got in, right? I probably could have possibly got a better deal, could have possibly got whatever, but it doesn't matter. I got in, and then that kind of like helped me learn. Then from there, on the second one, I bought as an investment property because I ended up not being able to get that one that I wanted because I just refinanced my first house. And if you do a FHA streamline refi, you have to live in that house for a whole year. So it was kind of a good thing because that one house I was looking at needed a lot of work. So the second one I got was an investment, 20% down loan. So I had to get something a lot less expensive. And that house I never lived in to this day. But yes, it's made me very wealthy because I got it for 185,000 in Riverside, California. And now it's probably worth about 650 or so. And since then, I've had constant renters in there. It's been cash flowing for me. And I really haven't had to do a lot of work. I mean, my dad and I painted it one time just because I thought it looked nice, so spruce it up, but did a countertop on the inside, but really like haven't done a lot. I've had the same guy in there for the last, I don't even remember, I don't know, maybe 6 years. So yeah. And then, I refinanced that house, not too long ago and pulled out, $256,000. And then I went and ran with it. So definitely made me has done really well. Right. And then the third one I ended up buying something a little bit bigger, something I thought I was going to stay in for longer. And I rented out the first one a full rental and moved into the next one with, that was a more expensive house, but with less down because now it's a personal residence, less interest. Right. So again, it's just going back to being intentional and kind of thinking ahead. But also being able to kind of shift the game too. If you can't buy something in your area, but you can buy something in another state or in another area as a vacation home loan and put less money down or put less money into it and at least start building some cash flow to help pay for where you live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then where are you heading right now? What are your this year plays? Where now that you have a portfolio of short-term rentals, did you ever say that you have midterm rentals? I don't think so.
No, I mean, but some of them, I mean, we have people that are there for 14 days or whatever. So I don't do them specifically as midterm,
Long
but
rentals and
yeah.
a little bit of everything. Where are you
Mhm.
heading eventually? You plan to sell all of those and then just keep certain? What's the deal?
I really don't. I sold one in my life and I really wish I didn't. So I don't plan on selling them. There could come a point where maybe, I would sell like maybe the multifamily because now we have that unit. We bought it for, 238,000 and it's probably worth a little over 400 because we've improved the property and improved the rents. Well, the cash flow is nice. That's something that, my business partner and I have kind of talked about possibly scaling up. So Something like that, I probably would. The long-term ones, I like those because those are no headache and they're just kind of running in the background. It's equity building, cash flow, just leave them alone and keep them. Build, legacy for my family and when I have kids. The multifamily, those are possibilities of possibly selling. I like the short-term rentals. I don't really want to sell those because I like where they're at. But the two we have in Florida are in a fund. So there's a possibility of either selling one or keeping them depending once our fund is done. When we pay the investors back, we're either going to have to sell or refinance those. So we'll see. But for me, where I'm going is I actually have been looking into getting into some flips. So I actually want to start doing more of that. This year I'm on to my second property, but I'm hoping to do 10 this year, whether it be, acquiring them and keeping them or flips. But I'm going to be currently working on one in Atlanta, and hopefully there's another one right near there that I might end up getting as well once this lady, gets back to me and lets me know if they're willing to sell this other property, because I like doing it. Like I like doing those. I like fixing them up and keeping them, but there's been some really good opportunities in certain areas. And so I want to try and, just do some flips, get some extra cash flow. So that way I could take that money and buy more, long-term deals.
Interesting. So now, how do people reach out to you? What about your mastermind program? Talk to me about that. Like
Sure.
what did it become what it is now?
Yeah, so we basically just wanted to create like a community, right? Everything ties in together because we want to teach people on what we've done, and my business partner and I have had like quite a few people, ask us how we got where we're at, and so we started the podcast, and it just kind of just went that direction, I guess, because then there's people that wanted us to coach them and wanted to learn more. And now, okay, so now it's not only a podcast, we have that. And then of course we have the fund to where if you wanted to invest in the fund, then you can kind of learn that way. Your money can be doing some work for itself and you don't have to do anything. And then you can also learn how to do it on the other end as well. So yeah, it's called, Land Shark Financial Freedom Podcast is our podcast, and it's a Land Shark, family is kind of what we're trying to create. So that way we can have a community of people who really want to grow and learn together. And I know a lot of people are doing this now, and it's great. Like I'm in a raising private capital coaching program group because that's something that I'm doing more of. So I figured that would serve me well. And I love the community, and I love what it's created. So for us to be able to do that for others, kind of on a smaller scale, would be awesome. And so it's kind of how it went that direction.
Interesting. How do people reach out to you? How can they connect with you? How can they hear more about you and all your stories?
So I'm on Instagram, SoCal Traveler, and then I'm on YouTube, SoCal Traveler. I'm definitely working on more YouTube videos. I'm more on Instagram from everything else. But then we have the Land Shark Financial Freedom Podcast, which is on Spotify. It's on Apple. We're on Instagram as well. And then our Lock and Key Capital is our company for raising money. So if you want to invest in our short-term rentals, you can find us there too.
So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much for being here. That was a lot of information. A really, really, really good key point for starting. I think people will find this very helpful. So appreciate a lot of your time.
Yeah, man. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys. If you made it this far, subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.